my eyes still see.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, I cannot tell you the day we've had, or I've had, largely thanks to Aurora. But the less said about it, the better, because I have so much ground to cover with reading this book, which I have to tell you is very well written when J.R. Moehringer is writing it. It's very competently done. It's a very professional heartstrings exercise. The problem with it is Harry's total disconnection. Well, maybe not total, but pretty comprehensive disconnection with reality. And his unreliability, because J.R. Moehringer has a very heavy task to fulfill, which is to put into orderly words and do it well, which he has done, Harry's claptrap, Harry's totally skewed view of reality. If you have come recently to this table, so to speak, the Harry story, the Harry feast, one could almost call it, you might actually be tempted to think, because Harry comes across, especially on television, as very plausible. And of course, he has a very good ghostwriter. But if you know anything about the subject, it is frightening. When I'm telling you frightening, I mean frightening. Because I am reading this book and because I know sufficient about the subject to know when he's speaking the truth, when he's deliberately not speaking the truth, when he is disconnected from the facts. Really frightening. And the lack of taste. I mean, I've seen those 4 interviews. The Stephen Colbert one, I thought, was where he was best. He came off best on the Stephen Colbert show, because Harry can be very humorous, and so can Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert is anti-monarchist. Harry is his perfect foil. But where does Harry get off telling a barefaced lie to Stephen Colbert? He asserts that, and of course he blames the British media for practically everything. And when he's not blaming the British media, he's blaming his family. But he has the unmitigated gall to say to Stephen Colbert that in the year after he and Meghan left the royal family, they said absolutely nothing, and the British press were after them. Excuse me, Harry. When did the Oprah interview take place? I just ask that question for what it's worth. And I'm going to pick up on 1 or 2 of the grosser lies that not only show up in the book, but show up on the television interviews. And then I'm going to plunge right in, if I may, into the book. And I'm not starting at the beginning. A friend of mine was very sensible. She said, don't start at the beginning. Start at the end. So the end being, if the book is broken up into 3 sections. The 3rd section is, I'm saved. I've got my salvation. Her name is Meghan. And that's where I started the book at the beginning. And this friend of mine said, no, don't start the review at the beginning. Start it at its most topical, which is where the Meghan part starts. And I have to tell you, William and the family are right. There is pre-Meghan and post-Meghan. Harry, pre-Meghan, there's no relationship to Harry post-Meghan. Now, whether you wish to say it's that he went into therapy or not is something else again, but he was in therapy before. But he went into more intensive therapy, according to him, when he realized that his rage was going to ruin his relationship with Meghan. And so he finally did something about it. Well, I'm glad he did something about it. But you know, to just go back to his assertion for a moment, that he and Meghan said absolutely nothing for the first year after Megxit. Not only was there Oprah, there was also Ellen DeGeneres, there was the Mary McCarthy or what Melinda McCarthy or Melissa McCarthy skit. There was Amid Scabies with funding freedom and finding freebies, and the endless announcements from Mr. Scabies. I think he's Mr. Scabies. He may be just plasticized scabies, but I think he's Mr. Scabies. His endless revelations from Meghan and Harry. What about all the plants from Sunshine Sacks? I mean, Harry would have the world believe that neither he nor Meghan said a thing. He asserted it in the Stephen Colbert interview. They said nothing. He said they literally said nothing. He used the word literally for a year. Literally, he said. So there are all of these. Then, what about all the plants from Sunshine Sacks? What about Harry? Let me remind you, after Megxit, you got somebody of impeccable background to contact me to tell me that Thomas Markle Sr. had interfered with Meghan when you knew that was untrue. If you didn't do it, why have you remained silent for 3 years since my book was published? And why haven't you said that you had nothing to do with it? I think you know the reason to that the answer to that is that if you accused me of making it up, I would sue you and I would see you in court. And I would expose one of your conduits, one of the many conduits that you have had into the public arena. But that's also talking, Harry. That's not literally saying nothing. And that, not only did you not literally say nothing, unless, of course, the person was lying, which for not a nanosecond do I believe they were, you then made it absolutely clear that the reason in the Netflix show, remember the show, the unreality show that you assured everybody you were never going to make but have made, that the reason why Meghan doesn't have her dad now is because you came into her life, so that can have nothing to do with interference whatsoever. You know, when this is so dreadful, this man has the unmitigated gall to lie brazenly, to make the most sweeping assertions, to never back anything up with actual detail or fact. And when he does back it up with detail or fact, it's wrong. For instance, Henry VI, who was the founder of Eton, how is he your many times great-grandfather when his only son, Edward of Westminster, was killed in the Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471? He only had one son. Harry, you may not know it, but he was married to Marguerite of Anjou, the she-wolf of France, she was called. I would suggest you read my books, or why don't you just take recourse to Google? I mean, honestly. I'd also like to know, Harry, how was Diana able to buy you an Xbox in 1997 for your 13th birthday, just before she died, and your Aunt Sarah retrieved it and handed it to you in 1997 on your 13th birthday, when the Xbox wasn't created until 2001? Do you begin to see the difficulty? First of all, he's a barefaced liar when it suits him. Even when it doesn't suit him, he has no connection or little connection to reality or the truth. And then he just brazenly makes these things up or comes out with false memories. Now, I think it's a combination of all. I don't think it's any one or the other. I don't think he's a perpetual, habitual liar who's totally sane. I think he's very dumb, without a doubt. I think he is very mixed up. I think he has a very loose connection to reality. I think he dips in and out of it, the way you and I would dip in and out of a bath. Then he dusts himself off and moves along. Harry also asserts that he booked Thomas Markle a first-class ticket to get him out of Mexico, from Mexico to London. First-class ticket on Air New Zealand. Thomas Markle has no recollection of that, Harry, nor can he, Harry, because Air New Zealand never has and still doesn't fly to the United Kingdom from Mexico. Then Harry vividly recalls being notified about Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's death. Now, I wrote a biography of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, which was published in, I have to check it, I've forgotten, 2012. And I'm going to read out what Harry's recollection of the Queen Mother's death is. And then I'm going to read out what my statement is, and I'm going to supplement it. Harry says, "At Eton, while studying, I took the call. I wish I could remember whose voice was at the other end. a courtier's, I believe. I recall that it was just before Easter, the weather bright and warm, light slanting through my window, filled with vivid colours. Now, let me read out what really happened. By Good Friday, so it's now at Easter, not before Easter, Eton is on holidays. Harry is in cloisters with his brother and his father. They are photographed coming back to England from cloisters and touching down at RAF Northolt on Sunday, Easter Sunday, the 31st of March 2002. So here we go. By Good Friday, Elizabeth was bedridden and unable to lift her head from the pillow. Even at this late stage, her fabled self-possession had not deserted her. Shawcross confirms in the official biography that she remained in complete control. The following morning, Dr. Holliday was accompanied by the Queen's physician, Dr. Richard Thompson. It was apparent to them that the end was very near, so Dr. Thompson alerted the Queen first, then Prince Charles, who was in cloisters and distressed to realize that he would not make it back in time. Elizabeth died at 3:15 p.m. on the 30th of March 2002. Aside from the priests and medical staff, she was surrounded by her two non-royal grandchildren, David Linley and Sarah Chatto, her niece Margaret Rhodes, and her daughter Lilibet. Harry's book is littered with false memories. Littered. I can't tell you exactly where they all are, but I have enough of a feel for this situation, not only because I have written extensively on the various members of his family, but also because I have lived a sort of version of this tale with my own family. The parallels between what I have experienced and what the royal family is experiencing with regard to my mother and them with regard to Harry, and before that with Diana, are distinct. The degrees might be different. Some of the circumstances are different. But many of the aspects are sufficiently similar to be not only redolent, but ringing in the most profound way, bells in my head. I'm going to start the review now. Harry begins with how he meets Meghan, and this does not accord with the versions that they have put out previously. So we need to ask which version is true, and if he's speaking the truth now, why were he and Meghan lying before? Nevertheless, it's very reassuring to know that I was right when I said that Violet von Westenholz is the person who introduced them. But according to Harry, he Violet sent him something on Instagram with herself and with Meghan. And he says, I'd never seen anyone so beautiful. Well, I don't know how that's possible when she had on a funny face. But then he waxes enthusiastic, or if he doesn't, J.R. Mowringer waxes enthusiastic. That beauty is symmetry and therefore represents a relief from chaos. Certainly my life to that point had been chaotic. I can't deny hungering for order, can't deny seeking a bit of beauty. Harry must be extraordinarily unaware if he doesn't realize that once he linked up with Meghan, his life has been nothing but chaos. He says that aside from her beauty, one of the great recommendations was that she was confident, free. She believed life was one grand adventure. I could see that. What privilege it would be, I thought, to join her on that journey. Well, Harry has previously said that one of the things that appealed to him about Meghan was that she was capable of anything. So I'm going to say that what I'm getting from this is that she released Harry from any bondages and any bindings and any tetherings to what I would call acceptable, predictable, aristocratic and royal behavior. I'm being careful how I put this for legal reasons. Then Harry goes on about, she said she got my info from Violet. She complimented my Instagram page. Beautiful photographs. So Meghan, Harry displays an interest, according to him, to Violet. And Meghan is right in there, texting Harry and Instagramming him and thising and thating. So Harry has waited all his life to find a woman who would dominate him, and the way Wallis dominated his great uncle, David, the Duke of Windsor. He has spent his whole life waiting, as the submissive that he is, and also when he's not being a submissive to her, he is free to indulge his alpha side, let's put it that way, no longer with scruple. He then goes into a description of he is staying with Sir Keith something or the other. I've forgotten his name. Where is it? Anyway, he's staying with Sir Keith. I think, if I remember correctly, it was on the Isle of Wight. And he is now, and she starts the Instagramming and the texting, and he is obsessively responding, and so is she. Well, I'm sorry, the woman was batting 40. He was in his mid-30s. I mean, is this the way people behave at that age? Unless they are desperados. I mean, if you're desperate, that's the way you behave. But if you're not desperate, I mean, he goes into a very, very descriptive account of the desperation with which each of them was texting the other. I mean, these are strangers. They've never met, according to him. And while we're on the subject of according, Meghan says that, and has said, that she was a friend of Eugenie before she ever met Harry. Yet, in Harry's account, they weren't. I just make that point for what it's worth. Anyway, they go, it's an exhaustive thing about Meghan driving that engine and he responding hysterically. I mean, I've said it before that each of them has a very histrionic side to their personality, and this comes across in the book. Desperate he is for love, for attention, and so I'm not sure she's desperate for love, but she's certainly desperate for attention and adoration. And they come across as obsessive and inappropriate. And she is so forward, it's unbelievable. Then, here we have Harry violating not only his own privacy, but ours, because Harry doesn't understand the necessity to show a degree of decorum and taste. So we have him being so keyed up with the possibility of meeting this great love of his life who he's not met yet, that, wait for it, the waves were towering. I've never feared death before, and now I found myself thinking, this is on Sir Keith's boat, please don't let me drown before my big date. Then another fair took place. The fair of no on-board loo. I held it in for as long as I possibly could, until I had no choice. I swung my body over the side into the tossing sea, and still couldn't pee. Mainly thanks to stage fright, the whole crew looking. Finally, I went back to my post, sheepishly hung from the ropes, and peed my pants. And then go straight from there to meet Meghan for the first date. I mean, you really couldn't make this up. This is supposed to be a man, a prince, a gentleman, and he is showing us that he's maybe a prince, but he's certainly no gentleman and certainly no man. I mean, you talk about the desperation, and there are, chapter 3 of this is dedicated to the desperation as the traffic was terrible. It was Sunday night. People were streaming back into London from their weekends. Plus, I had to get through Piccadilly Circus, blah, 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 blah. Very well written, incidentally. Building Tension by J.R. Moringer. He's now late. Finally, it couldn't be avoided. I texted, running a bit late, sorry. She was already there, blah, blah, blah. Then he's worried. I told my bodyguards, she's going to leave. He has a real fear of abandonment. And in the earlier parts of the book, you have to have a degree of pity for him, because Harry clearly suffered from the failure to grieve, which caused melancholia. Pedder has written in 1982 a wonderful tract on it called Failure to Grieve and Melancholia, which I think is available from Cambridge University. But I think it was done for the Maudsley Hospital, if I remember correctly. It's a long time ago since I read it, but I think that's it. And you have to have some pity for him. But you know, it's a fatal combination. Lack of intelligence, an overindulged childhood gratis his mother, no boundaries, no consequences. His mother dies. He's clearly fearing that he'll never get, and he was desperate to get love, desperate. And before he's even met her, he's almost decided that she's the one. I mean, pathetic. Then he arrives. He's late. At last I arrived, red-cheeked, puffing, sweaty, half an hour late. I ran into the restaurant, into the quiet room, and found her at a small sitting area on a low-level velvet sofa in front of a coffee table. She looked up, smiled. Elsewhere, of course, either she or he, I don't remember which one, said that, I think she said that she wasn't going to be waiting for him. But she did. I wonder why. I mean, since they'd never met and she doesn't like being kept waiting, why was she waiting? Just these little anomalies just keep on popping up to show us the reality of her ambition and his desperation. Anyway, I apologized profusely. I couldn't imagine many people had been late for this woman. Wrong, Harry. Not everybody's a dope and a dupe like you. Several of them saw her a mile off, one of whom was your brother, another of whom was your sister-in-law. Not everybody, Harry, gets the wool pulled over their eyes quite so easily. She was wearing a black sweater, jeans, heels. I knew nothing about clothes, but I knew she was chic. Then again, I knew she could make anything look chic. This from a woman who turns couture into the latest version of sackcloth and ashes. I tell you, desperation does strange things to people. Anyway, he gives a very penetrating account, blow by blow, of the meeting, and I don't want to read out too much because it violates copyright, but he does tell us that sometimes she used to leave her luggage at Soho House for weeks. They stored it without question. The people there were like family. I thought you're in London all the time. How have I never seen you? Well, the reason why we hadn't seen her darling heart was that she wasn't fashionable, she wasn't chic, and she certainly wasn't aristocratic. Anyway, acting was her main job, she told him. The thing she was known for in a very narrow circle. Because I used to see Suits, and because I was in France at the time while my children were at school, and I never had anything to do in the middle of the deepest, darkest French countryside but look at television or write or read. And notwithstanding the fact that I used to see Suits, I didn't know her name or the name of one of the other actors or actresses. That's how much of a star she was. And I'm not unique. That's typical. But she had several careers. Lifestyle writer, travel writer, corporate spokesperson, entrepreneur, activist, model. Model! What had she modeled? Oh, I forget, she was a supermodel as well. I must ask Christy Turlington about all those adventures they had together. She'd been all over the world, lived in various countries, worked for the US Embassy in Argentina. Her CV was dizzying. So are the lies, Harry. She never worked for the US Embassy in Argentina. She was on a 6 weeks internship gratis, her Uncle Mike. You are still with Meghan pushing all these fantasies as if they are fact. The British press is after you. You kept yourself silent. She worked in the embassy in Argentina. What? Anyway. She said that she wanted to be free. She had a plan. Plan? Help people. Do some good. Be free. And the Duke believed her. He thought, oh, isn't she wonderful? He couldn't see. Anyway, I don't want to go in too deeply into it because it's a very long book. It's written as if it's a novel. It's written as if it's a romantic tale. And I'm sure it is a romantic tale. And it's blow by blow. So they organize that because they've hit it off really well. And let me just read a little bit. We'd each had first dates on which there was nothing to talk about. And now we both felt that special thrill when there's too much to talk about, when there isn't enough time to say all that needs to be said. But speaking of time, theirs was up. She gathered her stuff because she had to go to dinner. And they had a brief goodbye hug. He said he'd take care of the bill. And she said in that case she'd foot the bill for thank you, flowers for Violet. Peonies, she said. I laughed. Okay, bye, goodbye. Poof, she was gone. Compared to her, Cinderella was the queen of long goodbyes. So Giamo Ringer. Well, according to him, he'd made plans to meet somebody afterwards. And the guy took one look and said, what happened? He'd immediately been struck by the fact that he was smitten. Smitten. Now, I'm not saying that people can't get smitten. I've been smitten, and I have been the one who has done the smiting. And I had, when I was younger, several immediate and electric encounters. So I'm not saying that being smitten can't happen. What I am saying is that no matter how spontaneous you are, and no matter how immediate the connection is, there is something deeply ominous about this situation, because he's so desperate and she is obviously so in a control. Then he's with his friend. Out came the tequila, out came the weed. We drank and smoked and watched Inside Out. And before long, Meghan's phoning him. Meghan's pursuing him. Meghan's getting in touch with him to organize a date before she leaves. Not for Meghan, the demure Meghan. And Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts. I'm just so demure. Not when it comes to hooking a man who she finds attractive and desirable. And I'm sure she was not at all influenced by the fact that he was Prince Harry, because Harry goes into much detail in the book about how he's convinced she never Googled him. I mean, he recounts a hysterical scene when she first meets the Queen, and she says to him afterwards, who was the assistant with the handbag, holding the Queen's handbag? And he says that was his Uncle Andrew. And then he's convinced, Meghan never Googled me. She really didn't. He doesn't figure out that she's far brighter than he is. And on the contrary, she was clever enough to let him think. And this is an act she has clearly maintained all along. And he is so dumb he's believed it. Harry, everybody Googles everybody else. Meghan Googled everybody. Meghan didn't only Google you. She Googled everybody. She was on the hunt for a rich and famous Englishman. That's what she said. I mean, anyway, I moved to a quiet corner of the flat. She was back at her hotel. This is after the first date, and she's taking the initiative. Well, she'd washed her face. I said, God, I love your freckles. She took a quick breath. Every time she was photographed, she said, they airbrushed out her freckles. That's insane. Oh, that's insane. They're beautiful. Blah, blah, blah. She makes sure she gets him to have dinner with her the following evening. She spent the day at Wimbledon, which accords with what's in my book as well. I mean, I have to tell you, a lot of this is just plumping out what's already known. But what gives one the insight is the complete lack of decorum and the giveaway that he doesn't realize is going on. I mean, he doesn't realize that she has him from the very beginning by the nose. And that we are made aware of the fact that his desperation is giving her the message that he is there for the taking, to be mopped up. Quite frankly, I think he was so pathetic that any halfway decent-looking girl who had gusto would have been able to pick him up. But now comes the self-importance, because they've made best friends with the waitress. She from the night before. They're now having dinner, and he says, she could tell what was happening. She got that she was an eyewitness, that she'd forever be part of our personal mythology. After bringing us a round of drinks, she went away and didn't return for a long time. When she did, we were deep in the middle of a kiss, not our first. Harry is a very private person who understands that the world is so fascinated by him as he is by himself, and Meghan, according to her presentation of interest, is in him as well. So everybody is as interested in them as he and she are in themselves. And talk about oversharing. You know, we now discover in a blow-by-blow detail each and every kiss. And Harry even goes into detail because Harry is very boastful, and Harry is very proud of being a shower. He is a shower. And remember, Harry drops his trousers at the drop of a hat. He's proud of being a shower. He's also informing us not only as to the state of his manhood in terms of whether it had interventions surgically or not, and then violates his brother William's privacy by informing us that William also had the snip, let's put it that way, since this is YouTube. But he later on also informs us that his Todger had a degree of frostbite. And he was on Stephen Colbert informing us that the Todger frostbite didn't kick in until after he got back here. Well, does that not strike you as extremely tasteless? Anyway, again the conversation flowed, crackled. Burgers came and went uneaten. I felt an overwhelming sense of overture, prelude, kettle, drums, act one. And yet also a sense of ending. A phase of my life, the first half, was coming to a close. As the night neared its end, we had a frank discussion. There was no way around it. She put a hand to her cheek and said, "What are we gonna do? We have to give this a proper go." What does that even mean? I live in Canada. I'm going back tomorrow. We'll meet. A long visit this summer. My summer's already planned. Mine too. Suddenly the whole stuff. Anyway, it goes on, and they discover that they both have a window of opportunity. And of course, her summer was so planned that 1 week that he was able to say to her, "Can you come to Botswana with me?" She said, "Oh, yes, that's the 1 week I have free." I'm sure if it was absolutely chock-a-block, she'd have jettisoned everything and everyone. So Meghan is now going to go to Botswana for a week with somebody she's just barely met in her 30s. Now, I'm speaking as somebody who eloped 5 days after meeting my husband. So you can't say I don't understand precipitate behavior. But I was 24. She's batting 40. He's in his mid-30s. By then, you've learned to be cautious. You don't literally jump into bed with a stranger halfway across the... Well, of course you do if it's a prince. Sorry. So stupid of me. Anyway, he gives an account of linking up for the trip to Botswana. And he gives an account that I have made a note, says this account diverges with previous accounts. So what he's saying in the book doesn't match up with what they've said previously. At least so far, and I think it turns out that it will be truly omitted, he doesn't go into how proud he was of Meghan dropping her load. But then he goes into sufficient detail for us to know that all about his torture. Well, he gives a very, very touching account of Meghan on her very best behavior, putting her very best foot forward and being so enthusiastic once she arrives in Botswana. And it's all magical, and he's being a real alpha male. He's going to take control of the situation. And so they're going to go swimming with crocodiles and this and that. And oh, I forgot. No wonder Archie's first word was crocodile. He must have seen the crocodile when he was split between Harry's trousers and Meghan's interior while they were in Botswana. He remembered crocodiles. They now have a really pathetic account of they're in the tent. They're in one tent. Now, I tell you, I'm no prude. And I stay with people all the time who are lovers and have stayed when I was in relationships, unless it is an established relationship. It is not acceptable for people to sleep in the same room, and certainly not in the same tent. But they are sleeping in the same tent from the word go. So there's not even any pretense of the fact that, that it might not, but also there's the pressure that's going to be put on that it better be, tacky. And then there's a sound, a munching sound. Meg bolted upright. What's that? Elephant, I said. Just one, from what I could tell, just outside, eating peacefully from the shrubs around us. She won't hurt us. She won't. Soon after, the tent shook from a loud roar. Lands! Are we going to be okay? Yes, don't worry. She lay down, put her head on my chest. Trust me, I told her. I'll keep you safe. I mean, okay, Meghan's an actress. J.R. Moringer has written scripts. How much of this is really believable? And if it happened, we rarely have one deluded desperado and one desperado willing to put her fate in the hands of a deluded creature. I could go on and on, but I think I should bring this to a halt and I should organize the material a little bit more carefully. Otherwise, we are going to be at this for the next week or two. Now, if you really want such a penetrating examination of the book and you don't want to buy the book, let me know and I will go at this rate. Otherwise, I'm very happy to speed it up and whiz on the surface. Because this book is very interesting to those who are gullible, I'm sure. To those like me who have knowledge of the subject, it is interesting in the most dreadful way. Because this is a study of folly ado and insanity in action, with everybody being blamed for the fact that Harry and Meghan are not being worshipped at the altar that he has created for her and she demands to sit upon. Because this is, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Meghan seems to think that she is a goddess and that Harry should be her, if only follower, but he should certainly be her number one follower. It's a cult, the cult of Meghan. And you have Harry, and he admits it without realizing. The admissions he makes in this book are truly frightening. And on that note, I will say, because I don't quite know how to proceed with this, because this can go on and on and on too long. It can be dealt with in depth. I can skate on the surface. I need to know what you want me to do, because this is in some ways a joke, but it's not funny. And the interesting thing is, will Harry get admirers as a result of this book? Because J.R. Moringer is a good writer. Of course, you can see that he's not written the whole of it. There's input from other quarters. More than that, I don't think I need to say. Much of it is fantasy. But this is being played out on the world stage. And Harry hopes that we, the public, will accept this as a valid version of his life, when it's anything but. This is the latter-day equivalent of if Patty Hearst had written a panegyric to the Symbionese Liberation Army. This is what it would look like. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening to this. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. And remember, please keep the questions and comments coming in. And I really do need some guidance from you as to what you want and the extent to which you wish me to delve into this. Because it's over 400 pages. It's very well written. J.R. Mowringer is a good writer. It's just faction, not fact. And it might even be mostly, in fact it is mostly fiction, because Harry's take on things is really the take of a very deeply disturbed person whose disconnection from reality is so pronounced, if you know what to look for, that it is actually frightening. I feel really sorry for his family. You know, as I said earlier, my life has parallels with this situation, and I understand the dilemma that the family has. And on that note, I will say, God bless and goodbye.